In this screencast, I'm going to show how to implement a KWin effect using the KWin JavaScript bindings with the tool Plasmate. All the documentation about the JavaScript API is available on TechBase on Development Tutorials KWin Effect JavaScript API. The API is divided into several parts. We have a global section which provides us access to some global properties like the effect pointer, which is in fact a link to our scripted effect, so the container our JavaScript effect is running in. And we have the effects pointer, which is a pointer or an object to our internal effects handler, which is basically the wrapper to everything provided by KWin Core, like all the properties provided, and most importantly, signals, which we can see here. When we have the effect window, which represents one window used by the effect, it's actually passed into most of the signals of the effects handler. It has various properties available, so you get a very deep understanding of what the window is actually about. And then we have our actual scripted effect, which is passed in as the effect pointer. And this again provides a few functions to invoke and a signal when the configuration changed. So now for starting writing the actual effect, we use the tool Plasmate. It provides us a list of various things, and here we select the KWin effect. We give it a name, which is maximize, so we want to write an effect which maximizes a window, which animates the maximization of a window. So let's start here in this template. We already have the fade desktop effect that we don't need, so we start with a blank sheet. And first of all, we create a global variable to use as a namespace. I personally prefer to not pollute the global JavaScript object. Inside this maximize effect, we can now create our private variables. One of them is a duration, and we use here an animation time method available on the global object, which provides us the past in time adjusted to the global animation speed level. Now we also can define a function as a callback later on to the load to whenever the configuration changed, so that we can react on the fact that the user changed the global animation speed. As a warning here, watch what you write. You don't have a real compiler here, and as you can see, I did a typo here while typing the text. So that would actually not work at all. If such an error happens, it is shown in the KWin debug output. And now we also need a kind of init method where we now connect the config change signal emitted on the effect pointer to the method we just defined. And last but not least, we should invoke this init method from outside the object. Now what we want to do is having an effect which reacts on window maximization, and therefore we have here a signal called window maximize state changed. It gets passed in the effect window and two states, horizontal and vertical, which is used to show whether a window is horizontally, vertically, or maximized in both directions. So that is in both directions. You see it's both horizontally and vertically maximized. Now we have here the vertically maximization. Now it's restored again, and the horizontal maximization. And you can see you can change these states with middle, right, or left click on the maximize button. Now this window maximization has actually a small problem, that is we don't get the geometry, and therefore we have to react on the window geometry shape change signal, which provides us the previous geometry, and this we can then use as the animation target. We can make use of the fact that we know that the geometry shape change is emitted before the window changes the maximized state. So we now define here a callback for this event. It gets passed in the window and the old geometry, and we make now use a little bit of the dynamic features of JavaScript and just store the old geometry in a new property called old geometry on our window. Now we need to connect it, this method. It's, as shown, a signal provided on the effects handler, and so we just simply connect it to the maximize effect geometry change method we just defined. Now what we also need is the function callback for the maximize state change. This one would actually also provide us the horizontal and vertical state, but we are not interested in it, so we can omit them. Now the first thing we do is to check that the old geometry is actually provided, and if not, we don't do anything because we cannot animate it. Now we define two variables, the old geometry and the new geometry, and use for them the current geometry and the old geometry, which we defined in the geometry change handler. So now to actually animate an effect, we in window we have here the animate method on the effect object. It takes the window which we want to animate. We then provide a way how we want to animate. In this case we want to do a scale animation. Then we say how long it should take. For that we take our duration. And now we have to provide the target of the animation, and this we have to provide with two values. Value 1 for the horizontal scale and the value 2 for the vertical scale. And in this case the two target of our animation is 1.0. So in the scale case it's always 1.0 if it's not scaled at all. So in the end of our animation it should no longer be scaled. The next value which we have to provide is another object of this kind, and it's the from, so where the animation starts from, and again it's with value 1 and value 2. In this case it's just the old geometry width divided by the new geometry width, and of course the same with the height. Now to actually do such an animation, the scaling is just one aspect, but it would not work correctly because it would scale from the center of the screen. So we also have to do a second animation at the same time to translate the window from its previous position to the new position. And here it works more or less the same way. We define the translation, we define the duration, and now we also have to, again, to define the value 1 and 2. And for a translation, that is actually 0.0. The from case is now a little bit more complex. That actually requires a little bit of thinking or playing around with the values. And what I figured out is that we need the x position of the old geometry, have to subtract the x position of the new geometry, and have to subtract the width difference. And as with the scale example, we also have to change it for value to height, and of course y. So, and that's actually everything. All we now need to do is, of course, connect the signal, but afterwards this effect is actually done. So yeah, with that, the JavaScript part is finished. So we switch to metadata and add a nice comment for this effect. So, and we have to adjust the plugin name because our plugins need to start with KWin for underscore effect underscore, and we should change the category so that it shows up in the effects selector. But unfortunately, in this development version of Plasmate, the categories provided by KWin are not yet listed, so we cannot really select it. Therefore, we will, in this example, not load the effect through the config interface, but through dbus, which is also possible. And as you can see, the installing the effect is quite simple. We just need to press the install button, and here again I'm doing a small adjustment for because of a small bug in the development version of Plasmate, but that will not be needed in future. So what we have here is the dbus output. We see a list of all the effects which we can get. There should now be shown the maximize effect somewhere, and now we can load the effect by passing in our plugin name, and we get the result true, so it was loaded, and now maximize should show an animation. We see an animation, but I would say it somehow looks a little bit wrong. We have the proper scaling, but not the translation. And here we see in the debug output that something is actually wrong. And so we go back to our JavaScript file, and yeah, there it is in the translate. That still set value 1. So we reinstall the whole thing and just unload the effect. And load it again. And there we go. Now it's correct.